Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome to another video. Yes, you read the title right. I am reviewing Godzilla Raids again. The fan reaction to Godzilla Raids Again seems to be very divisive, but mostly towards the negative side. Many people consider Godzilla Raids Again to be one of the absolute worst Godzilla movies ever made. I can understand why. But I have also seen some people come out and say that they actually do like the movie quite a bit, to which I can agree with that myself. Godzilla Raids Again is in fact one of my favorite Godzilla movies. And to be 100% honest, I enjoy watching it more than the original Godzilla. Having said that, don't get me wrong, Godzilla Raids Again is a very flawed film and is definitely an inferior film to the original Gojira. Do not get me wrong. This movie is very flawed. It's got a lot of problems and is one of the biggest examples of a quickie sequel that I have ever seen in my entire life. My personal history with Godzilla Raids Again, as I've said before, I own the classic media edition of Godzilla Raids Again. Everyone talks about the first Godzilla movie. Not many people talk about the second Godzilla movie. And also another aspect of the film that intrigued me was the fact that Godzilla fought Anguirus in the film. And I've always considered Anguirus to be one of the most underrated Godzilla kaiju. So that also had me intrigued. I sat down and watched Godzilla Raids Again, expecting actually nothing. I went into the film with no expectations at all. I knew it was going to be a black and white. I knew it was going to be super 50s, and I knew it was going to be very derivative of the original. But I came out of the film fairly entertained, and I thought it was a very enjoyable film. And as the years have gone by, my enjoyment for the film, believe it or not, has actually increased. Especially due to the fact that on the American version of Godzilla Raids Again, which is a bad movie, it has the fun audio commentary with Steve Reifel and friends, and I love that commentary. It's one of my favorite audio commentaries, not just for a Godzilla movie, but for films in general. I always look back on this movie with fond memories. I do think it's one of the most underrated Godzilla movies ever made. This movie takes place about a year or so after the events of the original Godzilla film. Two pilots named Shoichi Tsukioka and Koji Kobayashi, played by Hiroshi Koizumi and Minoru Chiaki, respectively — Hiroshi Koizumi is debatably my favorite Toho actor — are hunting for schools of fish for a tuna cannery in Osaka. Kobayashi's plane malfunctions and he is forced to land near an island named Iwato Island, which is an uninhabited strip of rocks formed by volcanic eruptions. The two men hear some strange sounds and they find two kaiju duking it out. Tsukioka immediately recognizes one of the monsters to be another Godzilla, and the two monsters then fall off a cliff into the ocean. Tsukioka and Kobayashi return to Osaka and report to the authorities and find out that the other monster Godzilla was fighting is a monster named Anguirus. Godzilla and Anguirus lived around the same time millions of years ago, and there is an intense rivalry between the two monsters. Archaeologist Kyohei Yamane, once again played by Takashi Shimura, who himself also experienced Godzilla's attack in 1954, of course, is also present at this meeting and shows a film which is composed of stock footage from the original Gojira, but whatever. He confirms that this is a second Godzilla member of the same species and that it and Anguirus were probably brought back to life by the same hydrogen bomb. In the Japanese version of Raids Again, it is clearly stated that this is a second Godzilla, whereas in the American version it's stated that this is the first of its kind. Yamane states that there is no way to kill Godzilla because, of course, Daisuke Serizawa, who is the inventor of the oxygen destroyer, had died along with the original Godzilla and burned the formula. Yamane, though, suggests that the military should use flares on Godzilla to attract him away from the shore, as Godzilla becomes angry when it sees lights because the hydrogen bomb's bright explosion had awakened and mutated it. I actually really like that plot point. It adds another level to Godzilla's character, that he's clearly not just a mindless beast. He has some kind of sentience to him. Godzilla arrives on the shore of Osaka, and while a blackout of all city lights is enforced, JSDF jets are sent to shoot flares from their planes to lead Godzilla away from the shore. He, of course, sees them and, as Yamane predicted, starts to follow them and leave. Meanwhile, a prison truck transporting dangerous criminals is in another part of the country, and all these criminals, who use body language, convey to each other that the cover of darkness caused by the city's blackout provides a great opportunity to escape from prison. They beat up two policemen guarding them inside the truck and run away. A A few of them find a gasoline truck and they use it to escape. However, in the ensuing chase, the truck crashes into an industrial building and starts a massive fire. This fire, which is much brighter than the plane's flares, attracts Godzilla back to the shore of Osaka. A few minutes later, of course, Anguirus swims to shore and the two monsters duke it out in the middle of Osaka in the very first long knockdown drag-out brawl between Godzilla and another kaiju. The military in Tsukioka begin a massive search for Godzilla, and Tsukioka spots Godzilla swimming to the shore of a small icy island. The jets fire their missiles and triggers a massive new avalanche, which fully buries Godzilla completely, thereby finishing the job. Not killing Godzilla, but defeating him and sealing him up in suspended animation. Obviously, yes, Godzilla Raids Again is a massive cash grab. And I say this is a quickie sequel for a good reason. The original Godzilla was released November 3rd, 1954. Godzilla Raids Again was released April 24th, 1955.
1955? There's something very strange going on around here.
5 months and 21 days after the original. At least Son of Kong had 10 months. So yes, this movie is very rushed. It has a story that is very derivative of the original. It carries the main A plot stuff of the original Godzilla and then just brings that into the sequel. It leaves away the interesting B and C stories of the original Godzilla. I will say that I am glad that they didn't do a complete retread of the original Godzilla by just having one monster again, which apparently that's an idea that Toho wanted to do in, I think, the mid-70s, was make a shot-for-shot remake of the original Godzilla, but just done in color with new actors. I like the story. It does feel like a legitimate continuation of the original Gojira. It doesn't feel like a movie that was supposed to be one thing, but then the executives decided, hey, let's just make it this. Kind of like with what I suspect they did with Gamera 2. So with all that being said, let's get into the pros and cons of Godzilla Raids Again. Pro number one is that this movie has a decent cast. Can't deny that the cast for the original Gojira is very, very prototypey. It's very, very experimental. Same case here with a lot of these actors. They weren't in the acting business for that long. I mean, hell, this was Hiroshi Koizumi's first Godzilla movie. But I like this movie's cast a little bit more than the original Gojira, because they're a little more fun. One of the biggest reasons why I don't think the original Gojira is so rewatchable, I feel like it has just a sense of glumness to it that this movie does not. George Takei does the English dub for the American cut. Oh my. Takashi Shimura as Dr. Yamane, he's pretty much the same as he was in the original Godzilla. He's not as moody and he's not as glum as he was in the original Gojira, though he's only in this movie for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Of course, Haruo Nakajima does a great job as Godzilla. Katsumi Tezuka does a good job as Anguirus. Pro number two is the music score. Now, the music score was not done by Akira Ifukube. The music was done actually by Masaru Sato. His scores are very, very, very good, again, for different reasons. A lot of time they're a lot more jazzy, they're a lot more catchy, and also sometimes they're a lot more creepy. It kind of gives you a sense of doom that's approaching. Pro number three is, like I said, the eerie quiet scene. D-Man 1954 says that this is his least favorite Godzilla movie because of all the quiet moments. To which I say, dude, what's wrong with you? I like the eerie, quiet moments. One of my favorite Universal horror movies is the original Mummy from 1932. And especially for the opening scene where you have Swan Lake that plays over the opening credits, but then for the next 15 minutes or so, the movie is damn near dead silent, except for when people are talking. That is something that Godzilla Raids Again gets right very, very, very well. Specifically, when Godzilla and Anguirus are attacking Osaka, there's a lot of moments where there's just dead silence. It adds a lot of atmosphere to the film, and once again, it creates a sense of impending doom. If the original Godzilla movie attack was Hiroshima, then this one is Nagasaki. There's no real contest on which one was worse. Pro number four is Anguirus. This is a new pro that I have for this film. I'm not going to say much about him, but I love Anguirus. I think Anguirus is one of the most underrated Godzilla kaiju out there. I recently learned, because of Wikizilla's kaiju profile on Anguirus, thank you so much, Goji73, for voicing that episode, that apparently there have been multiple plans throughout the years to start an Anguirus-centric series of films. That would have been awesome. I love Anguirus' design. Though the suit is questionable at times. Well, I'll get to that when I talk about the special effects. I think it's very appropriate for him to be Godzilla's first foe. He certainly does look like he can go to toe with Godzilla, certainly. And their fight is certainly very, very, very entertaining. So speaking of which, pro number 5 is the fun monster battles. There's only 2. There's the quick one at the very beginning, which lasts maybe 2 minutes. And then there's the big Royal Rumble in the middle of the film, which lasts maybe 10 minutes. Some people say that it's crap because it moves at such a high frame rate, which, okay, if you want to go for a super realistic version of this, yes, this fight is very, very, very wrong because monsters that size could not be able to move that fast. However, I will admit that I do like the final fight because of how nasty, brutal, and animalistic that it is. And of course, pro number 6 is the special effects. They're decent, and I do think that this is the area where the film suffers the most. The special effects are clearly a downgrade. Now, the special effects were once again, of course, done by Eiji Tsuburaya. The Anguirus suit, for what it is, I think it's fairly well constructed. There's lots of moments where you can tell, like, the rubber of the suit, it's very crinkly, it's very foldy, and it looks like there's patches of it that were just removed for whatever reason. So it kind of looks like the Anguirus has tumors all throughout his body.
It's not a tumor.
The Godzilla design for this movie, Gyakushu Goji. The suit is very similar to the Shodai Goji suit, which was, of course, the original suit used in '54. I do like it. I like the head. I like this the more dragon-esque appearance. I also like that it does clearly looks different, because it showcases that this is indeed a different Godzilla. It's the hand puppets that I have an issue with. The hand puppets look terrible for both Godzilla and Anguirus. Anguirus has extremely thin jaws. They look almost like they're made out of just cardboard. The Godzilla puppet, when he's looking at the screen, he looks like he's just folding his mouth in to look like a goddamn sock puppet. And it ruins the illusion of that being Godzilla's actual head. While I do say that the effects are decent, they are still incredibly rushed. There's lots of moments where you can see the strings on the jets and the tanks. The blue screen effects, I definitely think, are the worst effects in this entire film. They're just very, very, very noticeable, and it's painfully obvious that they're blue screen effects. The miniature sets, well, they're well made and they look good when they're destroyed, but they're shot straight on, so you kind of lose a lot of the illusion that they're supposed to be, these monsters are supposed to be giant, unless you really, really, really turn your brain off. But it's very obvious that these are just miniatures. But one problem that this movie definitely has is that its pacing is pretty fucking terrible. Instead of the original Gojira, which isn't a very long film, it's only 97 minutes long. This movie is 82 minutes long. This movie flies by at Mach 5. After Anguirus is killed, there's about a 25-minute period of time when the movie drastically slows down. Now, again, I'm somewhat used to it because I like this movie, but I'm pretty sure the average moviegoer will be thinking, what the fuck is left to do? Anguirus is dead. Godzilla is moving around. Why aren't we focusing on Godzilla? Why are we focusing on these human characters? As much as I love Anguirus, here, Anguirus is a very bland monster. He is clearly just thrown in to give Godzilla something to fight. He has King Kong monster syndrome, kind of. Most of King Kong's monsters, they're just there to give Kong something to fight. And that's the same case with Anguirus here. Godzilla clearly has a character in this film. It's pretty much just a big carryover from the original Gojira. Anguirus doesn't really have much of a character. He's just a bland, giant monster. I love his design, I love his roar, I love his fight, but it's just his character is very lacking. This movie is way too short. Like, I kind of already talked about it. I don't like short movies. This movie is a full 16 minutes shorter than its predecessor. Holy motherfucking shit. We could have had more monster fights. We could have had more destruction scenes. We could have had more of pretty much everything. This movie is so miserably short, and it's such a shame because this movie is so badly paced, but it's also so miserably short. It's not a good mix. It's kind of like Batman the Killing Joke syndrome, where the movie is so short but so poorly paced, it just kind of makes it a trudge to sit through at times. And the last problem that I have is that the monster battle is placed in the film just in a strange spot. I can't think of any other place where you could have put the monster fight between Godzilla and Anguirus, but still, if this movie was longer, they could have figured that out better. But I mean, if this movie was 90 minutes long, you could have had the movie progress a little bit more, have the monster fight take place 50 minutes into the film. The last 40-something minutes of the film is the aftermath of that big fight, but because the film is so short, the first 2 acts feel so quick, but then first half of the 3rd act is brought to a screeching halt. With all that said, despite all of this movie's problems, I still do love this movie to absolute death. It's clearly a quickie sequel, it's a cash grab sequel, and nothing more and nothing less. But despite that, it's still one of my favorite Godzilla movies, and it is still even one of my favorite kaiju films. I really don't care. I give Godzilla Raids Again a perfect solid gold 10 out of 10. Push the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Share this video with your friends. And as always, go out and if you're going to make a monster movie that's a sequel, make it longer for Christ's sake. Jesus.